Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Elchia. So in last chapter we saw that Sora and Shiro saved the Damphir girl called Plum from the brink of dying. So in this chapter we are gonna start a story uh, from Elchia. This chapter is again will be in multiple parts, like 4 or 5 parts, I guess, or maybe more. I'll be covering 2 parts in this video. In part one, that's they are showing the story of the Elchia where Steph is doing work or handling all the matter. That's started. Part one, Kingdom of Elchia. It was located on the western part of the continent of Andalusia and the last country of the humanity, who were the 16th ranked of the Exceed. After their battle with the Eastern Union less than half a month ago, the king and the queen, that is Shora and Shiro, won the matches and restored their territory to the double of its previous size. Following which, the problems of the country also doubled. There were two major issues. The first was the idea of forming a federation with the Eastern Union that the king and the queen, that is Sora and Shiro, had proposed. Establishing a country across the racial barrier was simply unheard of and thus a huge problem. Even though they had regained the portion of their territory, Elchia still lacked the technology to properly utilize these lands. The other problem was, while the Eastern Union had lost their mainland territories, their national strength still remained one of the top in the world. Their national strength, currency, not to mention the social structures and ethnicity, whatever it is, and language were totally different, yet they were expected to have equal access to resources. Since it's such a obviously difficult situation, I believe there isn't any need for further elaboration. This is the first time in the history that humanity was faced with such an impossible task. And the second problem was, really? Looking at the cards in her hand, the red-haired girl breathed a long sigh. Stephanie Dora. Usually abbreviated as Steph. Similar to, she was a member of the previous royal family, a girl whose disposition was totally contrasting with what the previous king's granddaughter should be. Even though she was harshly lacking in sleep and severely fatigued, her usual beautiful face was now filled with a scowl and she was emitting a dangerous aura. The reason was the second problem, and that was, at such an important time, where the heck do those bastards intend to come back? King City of Elchia, main conference room. Her rant was resounded through the entire conference room and it shocked everyone present. Daraku, I understand how you feel, but it isn't very good for a lady to say the word bastard, right? The one who spoke to advise Steph was standing by her side. He was mostly with white figure who looked older than any normal elderly man. His face was mostly similar to Steph's as it was filled with a bitter expression. His dog ears and tails were slightly dropping. Although he was wrapped in a kimono, his robust physique was still unmistakable. He was one of the werebeast Ino. He was the grandfather of the former Eastern Union ambassador Hasuna Izuna. The currently absent king and the queen Sora and Shiro had forced him to handle the problems of the country, another victim following Steph. Doraku. He? You were talking to me? Steph lagged in responding. Ino nodded his head. Yes, as this is the formal occasion, I should use the better judgment and use this suffix. Is there a problem? And I was wondering who you were referring to. Please address me as the errant girl of the king and the queen instead. Seeing the Steph smile in loyal self-esteem, Ino shrugged his shoulders. I'm afraid that if I were to address you so impolitely, others would also address me in a similar manner. Back to the topic though, Draku. Shouldn't you be putting your focus onto the things at hand? Following Ino's line of sight, Steph began to remember the present situation. She then began to speak inwardly to herself. Well said. Just tell yourself that you are just going through an important game right now. The game was not anything particularly special as it was another normal poker. But other than the fact that the Joker were included in this game, it was just a regular game of poker. Elchia had established a federation with the Eastern Union and the former as a leader. With Elchia territory doubled, there were still the matters of who it should be distributed to and what it should be used to. The powerful feudal lords were the ones who were reaping the tremendous benefits. From the current situation, the so-called equal and multiracial country was just an illusion. No matter how complex the system, the massive gap between the two nations' strength could not be offset. The day a free market economy is implemented, Alkia would probably be the totally and utterly trashed. Thus, they were trying to allocate the continental resources that the Eastern Union had requested for. Although it is relevant to say that such is simply Elkia's fate, it is inevitable that whoever has the power to do so will clump together to try to maximize their benefits during these times. For these reasons, there was a constant stream of Elkia's feudal lords challenging Steph, who currently held the legislative power, to a game with the intention of fulfilling their demands. The result was, Steph could not sleep properly for the past 2 weeks and was forced to continue playing games against them. Getting challenged to a game is such a good thing, yeah. Steph muttered in her heart because it was a trap. Everything is moving smoothly as planned. That's right. All is good except for the volume of that I'm up against. All in, please hurry up and strip off your clothes. What happened to her lady manners? Because she was immensely fatigued, her deep dark circles emerged under her eyes and the rays had distorted her expression. It was simply. Her face gave reminiscence of their fear to the king. The feudal lords looked at each other. Then they selected fold, which means they were now forced to obey Steph's proposal. However, Steph used her loud voice to render them speechless. She kicked aside her chair and stood up. Since you were willing to accept my proposal from the very beginning, why did you make me waste all my time? She threw the cards on the table and spread them. Her hand was 5 of a kind. Even if they had not folded, it would be the same result. Everyone was eliminated at one go. Looking at that hand of cards, the feudal lords turned pale. But Steph chose to ignore them and turned to walk away. If you don't win everything, you lose everything, all or nothing. Please only return once all your hopes are shattered, okay? Following which, Hasune Ino took over from Steph and smiled pleasantly at them. Then, as pledged to the Oz earlier, I will now eliminate your memories. Sorry about that. To put it bluntly, it was a conflict of interest. Managing the recovered territories properly would profitably contribute to the countries in the alliance. Even if we are unwilling to hand them over, we still have to let our territories be managed by somebody. Naturally, benefits would be reaped if there is a successful outcome. Or rather, we cannot do it any other way. So this is for the best after all. The problem lay within the fact that the nobles would move against the original proposition of those lands is whose. Thinking further, those were the territories of the former king, Steph's deceased grandfather. He had lost in his gambles. Since he had bet with them on his own violation, there would certainly have been some sort of opposition that was left dissatisfied. But if that's the case, why hadn't they used a game to stop the former king back then? How irresponsible of them. Whenever they lose out, they will cry that it's the king's fault. But once Sora and Shiro take the territories back, they rush to seize the slice for themselves. Do these nobles not have the ounce of shame in them? Aristocracy is such a system. Wouldn't anyone turn out like that after being like that for so long? Stefan happily walked through the corridor in Elchia city. Behind her was Ino, who was smiling while he spoke. The problem isn't that they were aristocrats. No matter how corrupt they are still rulers with excellent knowledge on how to operate and manage territory. as long as they have the heart and capabilities to do so, and trusting the territories to them to manage was unavoidable. That was what Steph was thinking. The problem was, just think of the nobles who were protesting earlier. Each one of them particularly had the word, I'm the only heir to gain the profit. Don't throw any troubles my way. Ah, and those who deliberately act that way are the all feudal lords who hold the power that is impossible to overlook. If it is not managed well, a power struggle may result, and once a revolt has been instigated, it would give them an excuse to interfere in national affairs. At that time, wouldn't that be easy? Easy to deal with, that is. The one who came up with that plan was walking behind, Steph with a sinister smile on his face, Hasuna Ino. When Sora and Shiro were absent, the one left in charge of the national affairs was the former king's granddaughter, Steph. Such a rumor was spread on purpose. Subsequently, this situation brought about a huge great opportunity. The challengers earlier, who were pursuing their own interest, had lost and were punished in accordance to the odds. They had promised to lose all their memories during the game, and put it flatly, it was a clean swipe. As a result, the policies and the beneficial punishment implemented by Steph were able to proceed smoothly with no resistance. It was very effective and had his Ino style embedded in the plan, which was the style developed by the multi-tribal Eastern Union to make others fall into their trap. However, once they thought about the reason the plan was proceeding smoothly and how frequently it worked, just how much they looked down on me. They practically treat me like an idiot. It was easy to see that those people looked down on her and her grandfather. Alright now, Dorku. Thanks to this, everything could proceed smoothly. That is the truth. We should instead be welcoming these ignorant people's contempt and smile while we make use of them, no? Ino, can you please not address me like that? Just Steph is fine. Steph was the head of the Dora family, which was the former royal family. Naturally, that means her title is Duchess. Nevertheless, Steph continued speaking in a weary face. I'm just a rent girl. Call me that, which doesn't sound like a position any person with honor. But when Sora Dono and Shiro Dono are absent, Stephanie Dono is essentially the representative of the royal family. So if we were to say you are the Prime Minister, then doesn't that give you the status of the noblest person in Elchia? Ino continued speaking with his actor-like tone. Duchess Dora is the Prime Minister of Elchia, humanity's last remaining country and the former king's granddaughter. She delivered such a large-scale and unprecedented plan to construct the multiracial country that merged with the Eastern Union under Elchia's leadership. Truly a beautiful, young and talented woman. How would such a person be addressed? Who would that be? Steph looked up blankly to the ceiling. The female protagonist of this heroic story is actually just an errand girl. The rich ironic twist to this story isn't half bad. Steph followed up by saying, do you intend to write a story and publish it? Upon hearing this, Ino smiled wearily and proceeded to change the topic. But within these 2 weeks, Steph did not lose a single time. That is truly a great feat to accomplish. That's only because the opponents are weaklings. While Ino had given the sincere compliment, he was immediately shot down in a sentence. Steph wrinkled her brow. Those guys are just some foolish idiots with crude ways of cheating. If the opponents were Sora and Shiro, I'll definitely be ridiculed to their best abilities and then taken advantage of. Surely I needn't say more. Well, that is indeed true. Nonetheless, Ino thought to himself. Initially, Steph relied on Ino's assistance as weird beast to accelerate her 5 senses, but Steph continued her winning streak, and now Ino was only escorting her around. Although this girl greatly underestimated her own strength, the fact is that she is indeed very strong. In comparison with those two, Sora and Shiro, they were simply too strong to speak of. As for normal humanity, very few would be able to beat her skills. Steph had no idea what Ino was thinking about and continued complaining. And they totally didn't realize I was cheating. Was it those feudal lords' true motive simply to make me suffer from the lack of sleep and die in fatigue? Stephanie Dono, you are starting to sound more and more like Sora and the like. Wham! Steph stomped on the floor and stopped walking. What did you just say? Her body was motionless while she turned her head and emitted a sound like her bones were vibrating. Did you just say I'm similar to that loose king who's playing around in the Eastern Union? But please calm down. I only mean that your style of gameplay is very similar. The ways Steph had adopted to win. They were to calculate the opening attack, hide her cards, swap her cards, and shuffling skills. Then to see through the opponent's cheat and use it against them, and even to bluff and mind game. The opponent. Those tactics were all learned from challenging Sora and Shiro after having failed times and times again. The fact that Steph was initially so afraid that if she were to lose, she would make the implementation of the Federation even harder, that she was so nervous that she was able to realize that what Sora and Shiro would do in such a situation while in her games. However, her lack of sleep coupled with the fact that those two had yet to come back had ignited a flame within her, thus easing all her nerves. Eventually, Steph began to unconsciously play as if she was playing against Sora and Shiro in her games. However, the opponent was too weak and practically just trash. Steph could not tolerate herself thinking of those people as Sora and Shiro for even a second. She and her grandfather were being looked down upon by such trash. That fact made it even harder to tolerate. Ah! Suddenly, Steph looked as if she was suddenly being enlightened. Her expression changed completely. Ah, that's right. The nobles were just trying to get in the way of the establishment of the Federation. That's why it's been so difficult. Stephanie Dono? Seeing her change into a different person, Ino uneasily called out to her. But she did not seem to hear a thing. Rather, she seemed to be looking at something that was not there. Steph's eyes suddenly lit up with brilliance and excitement. She happily turned on the spot. Ino-san, regardless of whether we are approached by nobles, merchants, or guilds, let's win away all their positions and force them to step down from their positions with nothing left on them. Everything can be just managed by the government instead. If we are short on manpower, we'll just grab some of the citizens and appoint them as officials. If anyone dares to do anything corrupt, we'll just force them to spit out their guts till they have nothing but bones. If they continue to be rotten, we'll just arrest them and get them all of them deported. This way, we can make the treasury rich, and the negotiation for the laws and the policies can just be decided by ourselves. All our problems would be solved, right? I'm such a genius. I'm not an idiot. Not an idiot. And then she collapsed. Stephanie Dono, please get a hold of yourself. Such is an act of abolishment, an act of terrorism. Steph was shouting while crying and smiling. She then hit a wall with her forehead. All of a sudden, she felt something move. As she looked to the moving side, in front of her Sora was there. Ah! Where had you run off to slack around at? He threw all the preparatory work to me and went off to have fun by himself. Although there were many feelings in her heart, what she was feeling the most was so much joy that she was blushing because of the fact Sora was right there. She had no way of hiding her joy in her chest, and many complex feelings started swelling up. So, Sora, you're back. Hey. Steph was rushing forward, but her face hit the pole and her nose started bleeding while she made strange wailing sounds. Her body laid on the floor while like a stick figure, and she stared at the ceiling above her. Then she suddenly realized the Sora that she saw was a reflection of something in the shiny polished marble column, her own face. Upon realizing this, Steph muttered a single sentence while in pain. I can't go on any longer. Stephanie Dono, you should get some sleep. No, I should say, please, you must get some sleep. I beg of you. Propped up Steph, who was lying paralyzed on the floor while he continued speaking. Do not worry. Sora Dono and Shiro Dono are indeed two people who are difficult to understand. He put in his best efforts to think optimistically about the siblings who were impossible for anyone to comprehend. But since they are stranded in the Eastern Union, they are probably attributing upon certain conditions with Miko-sama. Probably. While the Federation was established with Elchia as their leader, it's still not enough to rely only on the Elchia's efforts. I also think that that's where they are. They definitely should be progressing through a summit. Maybe it was like that. The actions of Sora and Shiro were always never on track. However, their actions had always played a huge role in Elchia. That was the truth. And so they should put their faith in them. But who knows? Judging from the way that those two usually speak and act, they are sure to confuse public and private matters. Indeed, the fact that their actions were always in line with their own desires, looking in the direction of the Eastern Union, Steph complained angrily. In any case, they are definitely fooling around with the Kinononomes girls right now, hauling up in the room engrossed in their games or doing something that any human being would deem incongruable. Ino had no way of denying that statement. Okay guys, that's it for this video. We'll continue this chapter 1 from part 3 in the next video. Hope you liked it. Please smash that like button, subscribe my channel if you haven't till now. See you in the next video.